First story. I, 25F, and him, 28M, have been together for almost 10 years. About 2 weeks ago, I found out that he cheated on me with his ex multiple times while we were first dating. I was 15 and he was 17 at the time. I started dating him while I was in high school, so obviously the rumor of him cheating on me was running around, but I decided to believe my then boyfriend. This ex and her friends bullied me for 2.5 years, and I already didn't like her for this reason. I also found out that he hooked up with another girl while we were on a break, or broken up, I don't remember, but when I asked him in the past, he always said that he wasn't talking to anyone else. The second girl he hooked up with was during our first year, and he was away for 6 months for basic training in tech school. During our first year, the first 6 months, together, we were also occasionally spending time with a girl that his mom was taking care of. But come to find out that he cheated on his ex with this girl. I found out that he received a BJ from this girl while he was with his ex, but that's not the point. I was telling this girl our relationship problems, and it was his duty to tell me that this girl wasn't someone I should be friends with. During the first 5 years of our relationship, he wasn't okay with me wearing certain clothes, talking to specific people, and many other small things that I didn't see as a red flag. Don't get me wrong, we also had our good days, but in some way, I was always looking for ways to keep him happy. 7 years later, I have an emotional affair with a guy because my husband was neglecting me and verbally abusing me, and I needed to talk to someone. This went on for 8 months. We didn't sext or flirt, he did kiss me and I told him that I wanted to strictly be friends. Meanwhile, I was married. He respected that. When I told my husband, he had to go to rehab and he told me that he was considering building a life with a random girl in rehab within 2 weeks of knowing her. She was also married. We ended up realizing that these people were just rebounds and we actually didn't want anything with them. 2 years later, present time. I told him that I felt insecure about something and he confessed to hooking up with his ex more than 10 times and the later hookup while we were broken up. I had told him to tell me anything inappropriate that he did in the past in order to have a good marriage several times. He had several chances to come clean. He even swore on our marriage that he never cheated, so how can I trust this man? We ended up getting married 5 years ago so that I could get health insurance from the military. I'm upset because he had several chances to come clean. But he waited this long because he was too much of a coward to tell me since he didn't want to risk losing me. This is all very confusing, but during these past 2.5 years, he has treated me very well and I love our marriage. He does everything and anything to make me happy. He has great communication skills and has grown stronger. But he dropped this bomb and I don't know what to do anymore. I'm assuming that since we now have a healthy real relationship, he wanted to come clean. He said that he was young, dumb, and wasn't taking anyone serious when we first started dating, and that's why he cheated. But I DK what to do. It all makes sense as to why he was so controlling at the time, but he also kept this secret for almost 10 years. Yes, he also said that I was meant to be a rebound, but it turns out that he eventually grew to love me. The relationship he had with his ex was short but toxic. There was cheating while in the relationship. Then they were hooking up while separated. Then when they started dating other people, they cheated on them. So that's why he cheated on me. We don't have kids, we just have a cat. I love him, but I don't know how to move past this or if I can ever forgive him. I'm having racing thoughts because now I don't know what's true or not. I feel like he is hiding more, but I DK if that's just my brain running in circles. From what I remember, I still allowed him to have his ex on FB during the first 4 years of our relationship. I remember him comparing me to her and saying that he is in such a better place with me than her when he would see her stories. That would slightly ruin my day, because there was no reason for him to bring her up regardless of whether she was doing better or not. Had I known about all this bullshit, I wouldn't have allowed him to have her on social media. I feel like a leftover plate and like I wasn't something special. During these past 9 years, I always thought that he dated me because he genuinely liked me from the start and saw a future with me. I love him, but my body naturally pushes back when he tries to kiss me. He scheduled a couples therapy session and wants to win me back. Please send advice. Second story. So, we had been together close to a year now, would be in 2 weeks, and her relationship with his male best friend was always suspicious to me. First of all, when we were 1 month into the relationship, she told me the night of her birthday that he was coming over. Suspicious. Why at night? She said it's because he worked late and got out at 10 p.m. She sent me some pictures with him, just side by side. She said they had been catching up because they haven't seen each other in months. This was a lie. She fell asleep after talking to him. She told me this the next day, but then later told me she had too much to drink, wine, and passed out on the couch. It later came up that she drank half a bottle of wine that he brought for her birthday. I freaked out obviously, but she assured me they had never been close to romantic in any way, that it was all platonic, and she's known him since middle school and sees him as a brother, and he has a girlfriend of 3 years since high school, so I should never worry. We go about our relationship, and 1 month later she is at a party with him after she went out with me. She lives far, so I couldn't go to the party. Then she sent me pictures of her time at the party, and told me straight up I wouldn't like them because she was basically kissing the guy's cheek to cheek in the pic. The lying part comes 9 months later. One day she left her Google account open on my laptop, and I went through her Google Photos. Weird, I know, sorry. And found some screenshots where she told her male best friend that they had to stop kissing because I had asked her to be my girlfriend, and she kind of liked me but kind of not, so she would see how it went from there. So she said they stopped kissing when I got with her, but she had already lied about everything about their relationship. This crushed me. I left. This means he also cheated on his girlfriend of 3 years, but my ex says they were on a break. I have no actual proof of cheating, but I ask you guys if you think she was ever unfaithful like the night of her birthday? I have no doubts. Third story. I married my husband, Dan, when I was 20 years old, not unusual in my community. At the time I thought he was my dream guy. We had our issues, but everyone does. Well, things were great in the beginning of our marriage. The first 3-4 years were absolutely amazing. We had so much fun, went on adventures, camping, hiking, road trips, etc. We bought our first house, a fixer-upper, and really bonded over the work. We made decisions together, budgeted for the projects, and we both spent many hours on labor. Towards the end of our flip, I noticed odd behavior from my Dan. He was distant and agitated. He became more controlling and angry. He had episodes where I couldn't reach him. He was in his own world, and I wasn't allowed to be there with him. I endured the silent treatment, the belittling, being manipulated, being punished, and his forced isolation. After some very tough months, I finally got him to see a psych. He was diagnosed with autism. This was shortly after it became a spectrum. Otherwise, the official diagnosis would have been Asperger's. We made accommodations and drastically changed our lifestyle to help him function more normally. The therapy was really helping. He was implementing the coping techniques and doing the work. I really respected his doctors. They heard me and worked with me to strengthen our marriage. We each had a toolbox, fully stocked. 1 year after his autism diagnosis, Dan woke me in the middle of the night, clearly distraught and terrified. We rushed to the emergency room where it was discovered he has a medical condition that mostly affects geriatric patients, AFib. He was 26. It rocked my world. This man will die from this disease. His heart will eventually fail, but not before years of suffering. He needed daily medication to manage his stroke risk, which he was adamantly against before this happened. This should have been my wake-up call. He went into AFib because he was watching porn and masturbating. After his diagnosis, I desperately wanted a baby. I had not wanted any children before this, and we were both on that same page. I just knew that if he died, I wouldn't have a reason to do anything anymore. I wanted to know that if the worst-case scenario came to be, I would have a piece of him with me. The itch was festering, and we decided that our life circumstances were changing and a baby would bring joy and a much-needed change of direction. After a year of weekly therapy, daily rituals, momming him like it was my divine duty, and sucking up all of the negativity, I fell pregnant. My daughter is absolutely one of the best decisions I have ever made. She lights up my life, gives me reasons to strive to be better, makes me laugh like no one ever could. I honestly thought that life was headed in a vertical trajectory. But, ladies and gentlemen, this is where shit gets really, really real. Dan was offered a job that would require us to relocate 4 hours away. The pay couldn't be beat, and with a baby coming it made sense to make the move. This is my first fuck up. I was isolated and heavily pregnant. I knew no one, and due to COVID ramping up I wasn't really in a position to go out and make friends. I relied on him for my social, emotional, and financial situation. This all seemed normal at the time, but looking back I am appalled at how I let this unfold. I was on my own for the last half of my pregnancy. I'm fortunate enough that at my 39-week mark my mom came to stay with us. The plan was for her to stay for a week after my daughter was born to help with the daily tasks. I ended up going 13 days past my due date. After a very long labor, 32 hours of active, hard labor, my daughter was born at home. Dan pulled her from my body. It was the most connected I have ever felt with him. Seeing his tears and watching him hold our perfect newborn baby filled my heart to the brim. And maybe that's why I ignored what happened next. The day of my expected delivery my mom suggested we go on a brisk walk to get things moving along. We spent some time at a park and my mother ended up breaking her leg, quite severely. This prolonged her stay with us, as she couldn't drive and it was logistically impossible for me to take her home. I loved having my mom there. Even though she ended up being less help physically than we thought she would, having her experience is what got me through the first weeks with my new baby. After spending so much time away from her toxic marriage my mom decided that wasn't how she wanted to live her life. My mom's ex still thinks it's my fault they got a divorce because I sabotaged their marriage. I got a lot of hate from him and my ex-stepsisters. I felt like they were using my social media to keep tabs on my mom, so I deleted all of my socials. When the divorce was final she relocated to our city. I spent loads of time with her. I wanted to rekindle our relationship and my daughter adored her. My husband, however, grew jealous and resented the time I was spending with her. He would make rude comments about my childhood and the way we grew up. My mom was an uneducated single mom of 3 kids, and my dad was addicted to meth. We were in poverty. We were ostracized from our family because we weren't practicing their religion. It was just us, and my mom really did the best she could with our situation. He began to drive wedges and pick fights with me about my mom. It was strained, so I backed off of my new friendship with my mother. I hate that I did this. The regret of that decision haunts me literally every day. I didn't know what turn my life was taking, and I wish I hadn't left her in the dark. Monthly struggles became weekly struggles which became daily struggles. I never knew who he was going to be when he got home. I admit, I was weak, and I should have stood up to that shit a long time before I did. I just did my best to be the picturesque housewife. The woman who cleans, cooks, fucks, sucks, and has a rock-hard body. I needed to do all of those things to prove that I was enough. I spent my days with my daughter teaching her, feeding her, running errands, which was not easy with a baby who needs to wear a mask everywhere we go, managing the house. Dan was working mandatory overtime and working a good distance away. He left home early and often came home right before bedtime. It was during this period of time that I again became pregnant. I was very excited and I looking forward to my daughter having a sibling. Unfortunately, at 14 weeks I suffered a miscarriage. The pain and grief overwhelmed every aspect of my life. Things lost their color, it was hard to smile, and it took serious willpower to keep taking care of my little girl. My baby was dead, and I had to figure out how to be okay again. I spent lots of time talking to Jackson and we decided that it was best to stop trying while I healed physically and mentally. I thought I had made my intentions perfectly clear, but he took the first opportunity that he could to get me pregnant again. My very next ovulation cycle I was pregnant. I didn't have enough time to process my feelings after the loss of my child before I had to jump back into pregnancy again. This felt like a huge violation of my boundaries, and the disregard for my feelings and body was a slap in the face, but my reality was that we were having another baby. So I forced my big girl panties on and tried to make the most of what should have been a precious time for us. To say that my third pregnancy was hard would be a gross understatement. I became quite ill. I developed hyperemesis gravidarum, which is something similar to a stomach flu, only lasting for the entire duration of my pregnancy. I was vomiting a dozen or more times a day. In total, I lost 18 pounds. I had severe constipation, which culminated in literally the worst postpartum poop you can imagine. That constipation, combined with large hemorrhoids and a lack of body fat, made my recovery so much harder than the first. During my pregnancy, Dan and I were often not having sex, with virtually no intimacy in the last trimester as my symptoms were becoming unbearable. He was distant and uncaring. He grew tired of hearing my woes and essentially shut me out. He stopped going to my prenatal appointments and made no effort to connect with our family. He was angry and had outbursts of mean words followed by manipulative conversations that left me feeling confused and guilty. I became depressed, and as my due date approached, the anxiety of another home birth was overwhelming. Dan was exposed to COVID at work and had to isolate himself from us. He stayed in our travel trailer while my daughter and I stayed in the house. It was very tense and required a lot of effort to keep things moving around the house. He took his computer out with him and spent most of his time on his game. I wondered then if he was having an affair. During the Christmas season, he was practically absent. He did not want to do any of our traditional Christmas activities, family photos, making gingerbread houses, shopping for gifts, and we almost didn't have a Christmas tree because he didn't see the point and thought Christmas was stupid. Christmas Day rolled around and he couldn't be bothered to interact. He was sucked into his phone and wasn't excited about opening presents. He was rude toward my family. It was a very small gathering with just my mom, my sister, and my brother. He wouldn't take pictures of or with our daughter and didn't say thank you for the gifts he received. After my family left, he complained about them the rest of the evening. I didn't have the energy to deal with his hostility, so I tried my best to avoid him. Dan began working overnight shifts as the building he was working on was now making appointments, and any of the warranty work needed to be done after business hours. Jackie picked up an interest in trading and informed me that he was opening his own checking account so he could trade outside of our main checking account. I had reservations, and because of the state of our relationship, I was instantly suspicious of it. I tried to give him space and trust that he was just using it for his trading hobby, but I knew that it was a bad situation. He grew colder toward me every day. I never knew who he was going to be when he came home, and I was always on edge. I gave birth to my second daughter at home. It was very traumatic, and both my baby and I nearly didn't make it. She was born in her bag of waters, and because of the swelling it was causing her to be stuck in the birth canal. Her heart rate was getting slower and fainter, and ultimately my midwife had to break the waters to give her enough room to come out. I had some complications which resulted in her umbilical cord detaching from her placenta while it was still inside of me. So while my midwife was working on my newborn's heart rate and breathing, I was bleeding out. The umbilical cord was barely holding together, and it's honestly a miracle that I carried her to full term. The paramedics were called and they were able to coax the placenta out in 3 pieces. If you remember from earlier, the dreaded postpartum poop occurred 6 hours after I gave birth. It was like having a baby all over again. Everything hurt so much more than I anticipated, and it made me feel inadequate when my baby was allergic to my breast milk. My body really suffered for this pregnancy, and even now 2 years later I still have issues. I was unable to have intercourse for 2 months while my body healed. I did what I could to appease Dan's sex drive, but I knew it wasn't enough. Our anniversary came and I tried to make it special for him. I did loads of research for his gift and saved up to get the perfect one. He barely gave it a thought. I doubt he will ever actually use it. It's still just taking up space on the shelf. I probably wasn't really ready for sex, but I didn't want our anniversary to pass without it. I was very conscious of my postpartum body and honestly, the sex still hurt. It wasn't spectacular, but I thought it was okay considering everything. Turns out, it was a huge letdown for Dan, and as soon as I fell asleep, he got out of bed. I thought he might be using the bathroom, but when I looked he was on his computer watching porn and masturbating. Every shred of confidence left me. I went into housewife overdrive, thinking that I could make up whatever he was missing through my acts of service. It had been some time since I did a real deep dive cleaning. I finally got around to filing our stack of mail. I remember, crystal clear, the soul-crushing sight of OnlyFans charges on Don trading account statement. It all made sense, and I was so disappointed in myself. He was having an EA. I knew he wouldn't be honest with me, and I needed to know the extent of his sneaking around. I waited until he went to bed that night and I went full detective. I found messages. I found emails. I found his frequented sites and it made me sick. Most of the time I was pregnant he had developed a relationship with a girl on of Bella Marie and was watching porn multiple times a day. I say girl, because she was 18. He told her things about me, things about our marriage, invested his time in her. He was obsessing and he constantly checked in with her. He gave her slack where I did not get any. He told her she was beautiful and perfect. He told her he imagined them making love. I felt dead. I wanted to die. I thought about it over and over. What was the point of anything? My life was a lie. I was trapped, uneducated, unemployed, and now I have 2 children. I pictured my family without me. I thought about what the lives of my daughters would be like without me. I wondered if my absence would be better for them. I wondered if the harm I caused them from seeing this emotional breakdown of our marriage was worse than if I just stopped being here. But I couldn't do it. My drive to protect my girls overrode my feelings. I was so angry and I didn't want them to be raised by a liar, a cheater, and I never want them to think they aren't good enough. After I screamed at Dan, I sent her an awful message. Honestly, she probably didn't give a shit about what I had to say. I was just another faceless wife. She never had to actually be confronted in person, so there were never any real consequences for her. I support sex workers. I don't support infidelity. She knew right from the start what our situation was. And to me, that's despicable. I almost wish I knew her personally, because beating the fuck out of that classless bitch would have felt really good. It would have felt even better to punch Dan in the face, and I would have, except I knew that I had nowhere to go if things got violent between us. Flash forward a few years and we are in couples therapy. I was put on mood stabilizers and we are also in individual therapy. He has been diagnosed with bipolar. He often blames this illness for an overactive sex drive. He has had a few slip-ups with porn in that time. I have forgiven him. He started to go to a support group, but I suppose he lost interest because that didn't last very long at all. I guess I thought he had changed and it was just part of the process. I stupidly allowed him to watch porn when I didn't feel like doing anything sexy with him. It was a mistake. I found him watching porn with more frequency. He probably hid a lot of it too. I learned to just ignore it, like I always do. Dan lost his job a few months ago. I supported him through the change to a new, lesser paying position. We cut nearly $1,000 out of our monthly budget. We did this so he could stay close to home and not have to travel for better wages. My cousin committed suicide a month later, tore the whole family apart. I didn't get the support from him like I thought I would. I mostly just kept quiet and cried while he was at work or not at home. And then this morning he drops a bomb on me. He just blurted it out in front of the kids. He told me that he masturbated in front of a mutual friend while he was on vacation with our girls several months ago. I stayed home very sick. He only told me because he was afraid I would find out. It makes it so much worse that he can't even be trusted when he is with our daughters. I'm lost. I'm hurt. I'm wondering what the hell I do now. It's no wonder he has been dropping hints at an open marriage. No wonder he has been distant. No wonder he has been anxious. He said he didn't tell me because of the way other things had played out. He felt it wasn't the right time. But he had months of it being the right time before he lost his job and I lost my cousin. It's just excuses. This is a whole new level of cheating for me, and it feels like this is the end. I have nowhere to go. I'm still a stay-at-home mom, and my kids are too little for me to go to school. I am fuming at my so-called friend. I am numb in a way. I can't even cry. I feel empty from so much of this bullshit. My life is a train wreck. I don't even know if I want a divorce. I love him. Isn't that pathetic? I'm not sure that he loves me. And now I have to go and face him. And I just don't have anything to say. I want to ask him to leave, but how would that work? I want him to go work out of town and let me be. But how? How? It's not like I could trust him. In fact, the 3 people I thought I could trust the most in the world just showed me that I am all alone. The betrayal is raw. How can I ask him to never speak to them again? How can I trust that he's following through with that? How can I let him visit them by himself? But how could I go with him? How can I trust my children with them if I die? I feel like a fool. We went up there for a visit last month, and I knew I sensed tension, and it was awkward. I thought it was just because I was up there for my cousin's funeral, and they didn't know what to say to me. I know better now. My friend is pregnant. If Dan hadn't had a vasectomy, I would wonder if it was his. A part of me still does, I guess. I was happy for her, now I'm just angry. What was going through their heads? I want to know all of the details, but at the same time I am disgusted by the whole thing. I never want to have sex with him again. How can I possibly move on from this? I feel like I have to pretend that it never happened. I feel like I am always getting the short end of the cheating stick. I'm so tired of being that kind of example for my girls. I know they are young and don't recognize it now, but the shame I will feel when they are old enough to realize makes me sick to my stomach. But I feel trapped and with no choice but to stay. I want to hate him for it. I wish I was stronger. Then maybe this wouldn't be happening to me again. Maybe I could hate him if I wasn't such a pushover. Maybe I could stand up for myself and tell him to get lost. But that's just a daydream. I am weak. And he knows it. So I just keep losing over and over again. It just really sucks to always be the loser. What do I do now?